What's up everybody, man back, welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla Kong Supernova discussion video. Today we're going to be talking about our boy Kong. In today's video, I want to be discussing what Kong might be doing in Godzilla Kong Supernova. Kong is kind of like this mysterious question mark about the movie because despite the fact that it's Godzilla Kong Supernova, nobody's talking about him. Godzilla vs. Kong was of course a double bill, Godzilla versus King Kong. They were supposed to share equal relevance in that movie, and it depends on who you ask, but they pulled it off to varying degrees. I actually think Godzilla serves a pretty Godzilla core function in that movie. Godzilla does about as much as I could think you could do with him in that film without like completely radically altering the story of that movie. Godzilla actually has the most screen time in GVK than he has in the entire MonsterVerse, but you'd never know that because the movie feels like a Kong movie. It's so about Kong. Kong is such a central character. He does so many more meaningful and impactful things than Godzilla, and you're going on his emotional journey, not Godzilla's. So it feels like a Kong movie. As for Godzilla Kong: The New Empire, it was kind of a curveball because Godzilla is basically a cameo in that movie. He's not actually a cameo, but he's about as much of a big gun type character as he ever was. This is throwing back to like the 60s, 70s era where Godzilla shows up, kicks butt, and that's it, and he serves no real function to the story other than to do a big beam, and that's his whole thing. Godzilla shows up, he does a big punch, and then that's it. It is way more a story about Kong. Kong has an emotional arc. He has a full-on character arc. He learns, he grows, he frees his people. Kong has so many things that he's doing. He has a full plot line that sees it all the way through with a beginning, a middle, and an end. Kong has a character arc that follows the same progression. Godzilla has none of that. Godzilla shows up, gets a new power up to sell toys, and then that's the movie. Godzilla doesn't do much. So when it comes time for Godzilla Kong Supernova, a lot of people are really ready to focus on Godzilla. We're really ready to put the emphasis on Godzilla, and this mostly stems back to an Adam Wingard interview that came out really around the time The New Empire came out. Adam Wingard has always been very good about being receptive to feedback, and one thing was he was receptive to the feedback of Godzilla vs. Kong. People wanted the monsters to just exist on their own for long periods without humanity, and he gave us exactly that. People then had critiques of The New Empire that they wanted more Godzilla doing more things, and he was receptive to that. Adam Wingard said that if it were up to him and he got to continue the Godzilla Kong trilogy, the third movie would be about Godzilla, with Kong being the supporter this time. Which leads to a weird place. The fan base is in an odd spot where nobody is talking about Kong. It's like nobody wants him to be a part of this movie for the most part. A lot of us, including myself, are really ready for them to go back to solo films with Godzilla taking on his own movies and Kong taking on his own movies before we eventually build back up the next crossover. They're not going to be doing that. They want to sell more tickets and toys. So they're going to continue putting these two together. And a lot of people are really talking about the new movie as if it's going to be a Godzilla movie. Like it's Godzilla 3 and maybe Kong will show up, but like mostly people talk about Godzilla. The whole point of discussion is Spacegodzilla as a Godzilla threat. Maybe even some of us on this channel, for instance, are talking about Godzilla Jr. being in the movie. There's lots of theories and possibilities on where Godzilla could go, but not as much discussion on what Kong's up to. People are really generally kind of burned out on Kong and ready for Godzilla, and a lot of people in this fandom, a lot of people didn't like Kong to begin with, but now more than ever people are resenting him out of jealousy that he gets better and more important things to do than Godzilla, and he gets to do more of them on screen. I get it, Kong's had a lot to do, Godzilla needs his time to shine too. I want more Godzilla as well. It's interesting though, because these are not the feelings from the general public. This is a fandom problem. The general public, people are actually very chill on Kong. Kong is a huge fan favorite. Kong is, I would argue, the fan favorite of both Godzilla vs. Kong and Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. Kong is truthfully the heart of those films, and when you read critics and reviews talk about the movie, they're always putting the emphasis on Kong's emotional arc. In Godzilla vs. Kong, it's his connection to Gia, and in The New Empire, it's his connection to Suko. That's what people are really putting the emphasis on. Not anything else, just Kong's emotional arc, and people are really invested in Kong. So with those two sides, the Godzilla fanbase and then obviously the general public, what can we expect? I fully believe we're following the Wingard direction, and I want to see that happen, where we pivot to a more Godzilla-focused movie, and from what I've heard, Supernova does seem to be following Adam Wingard's pitch, at least generally. So I do believe we're going to be having a more Godzilla-focused movie. If I had to guess, I think we're going to have a more Heisei-styled tone, although I'm not sure. I think we will have a bit more of a Heisei style tone with the elevated sci-fi and sillier concepts like Space Godzilla and like space travel just being kind of a casual thing introduced in Godzilla vs. Spacegodzilla. I think that we could get to a point like that in the MonsterVerse, which I'd be okay with. I'd like to swing back in a bit more of a sci-fi direction myself. All of this is good with me, but again, it's important to note we don't actually have confirmation on that. This movie could be as much of a Kong movie as anything, which leads to the question, what would that even be about? Well, where is Kong now? Kong's story is truly, in a way, finally over. His main story arc of the entire MonsterVerse went from him being a lonely and isolated god on Skull Island, so traumatized by the events that he's been through that he can't even bring himself to form a connection with humanity because he knows he could lose them too. Kong goes from being a distant, isolated, rageful, lonely, noble king to being a friendly leader and a family man with people and a son and a friend in Shimo. He can make friends with his mortal enemy Godzilla, and he has a deep love and bond for humanity and Gia. Kong really, finally, after all this time, has it all. Everything he's been searching for. He has a home that suits him and his new size. He has a family. He has people to look after and interact with. He has a whole world to explore and adventure through. He even has some kick-ass weapons to back him up. And he's got maybe a frenemy up on the surface. Finally, Kong has everything. So what comes next? Well, first of all, if this movie was going to be really dedicated to world building, I don't know if it will be. I would love for it to be. We still have yet to see a MonsterVerse film meaningfully develop the conflict and consequences of the previous movie. Kong Skull Island's like a bit of an exception because it's a throwback, it's a prequel. Godzilla King of the Monsters time skips 5 years and essentially forfeits all conflict and development that could have stemmed from Godzilla 2014, other than that the military wants to kill the Titans and Monarch wants to defend them. That escalates, that's some nice escalation in world building. The technology world builds, but I'm talking specifically the consequences and the immediate world of the last movie. We jump so big into King of the Monsters, it's a huge leap to get to the Argo jet. It comes out of nowhere. Godzilla vs. Kong doesn't even make an attempt. They completely change the concept of what the Hollow Earth is. They introduce Apex and all these other sci-fi concepts. Mechagodzilla comes out of nowhere with essentially no setup. It also does not develop the consequences of King of the Monsters. No time spent on the immediate aftermath of the mass awakening. We still have never really heard much about what happened in the follow-up to that. We don't know how it affected the world or economies or governments or anything. King of the Monsters did a much better job at that than any of the other movies. New Empire doesn't even do that either. In fact, regresses the conflict of Godzilla vs. Kong to having Godzilla and Kong continue to fight. I would love to see a movie actually commit to developing the immediate world and consequences of the last movie. And consequences don't always have to be bad. Kong freed the apes. That could lead to something in the future. For instance, like, what's their next move? Kong killed Scar King, yes, but are the apes gonna stay there? Probably not. Kong's gonna want to get them out of their horrible, burning prison. He's gonna want to bring them out into Hollow Earth, and they don't have to stay in the subterranean realm either. Godzilla trapped the apes in the subterranean realm with no Hollow Earth portals. They're free now. Kong can lead his people into the broader Hollow Earth. Maybe he can even reclaim land for his people. Kong could also start to rebuild his temple from Godzilla vs. Kong. It's got a giant hole in it now, so maybe that'll be a little harder than not. I'll talk about in a minute a way that could be cool to rebuild it, but Kong could even be rebuilding his temple. He could be moving his people back into their ancestral homes before Godzilla imprisoned them. Maybe even Kong goes back to the surface and reclaims Skull Island as this tiny little isolated piece of the surface world that is a refuge for the apes, so that they can travel in and out of Hollow Earth at their will. I understand Skull Island is like completely destroyed at this point with a massive storm raging over it, but again, I'll point out in a second how you could easily clean that up. Also, would some of the apes be loyal to Scar King? Are all of them going to obey Kong? Are all of them going to be friendly towards him? Some of them might want to kill him. Some of them might not view him as a king. Some of them might fear Shimo and want to kill her. Some of them might want to take Hollow Earth portals up to the surface and claim the surface world for their own. There are so many consequences that could be unpacked in this next movie, and I'm not really expecting them to be. The apes and the kingdom, I don't know what role they'll play in the next movie. There is a new Godzilla Kong ride coming out, and this ride sees Godzilla and Kong teaming up to defend Kong's ape kingdom. This tells me that the direction the next movie's probably going to head in is skipping enough time to where Kong has established his ape kingdom, the immediate consequences of that are going to be a thing of the past, and it also tells me we're probably not going to be spending much time with the ape kingdom in the next movie, because if they're willing to cover that ground in a ride that could theoretically dissuade people from going to see the movie, movie if it covers too similar of a topic, they're probably going to be covering something entirely separate in the new movie. Also, there was a lot of critique about the last movie that we spent too much time in Hollow-Earth and lost our connection to the humans. In order to get a more human-focused plot, we kind of can't spend all that time developing the apes conflict like this is a true Planet of the Apes movie. It is possible that we could spend some time with the apes in Hollow-Earth, maybe Kong or one of his apes or some of the apes explore Hollow-Earth, maybe they discover a hidden threat. Maybe we tap into one of the theories I've talked about before and they accidentally use one of the Iwi pyramids or one of those Hollow-Earth pyramids to beacon or signal to the surface world, signal beyond the surface world, and summon an enemy titan into war. I've discussed this as a theory I've talked about in a full video, how the next monster might be summoned to Earth through that Iwi pyramid. If we're going to be following up on the immediate consequences of the last movie, this would be a meaningful way to do so. Maybe some of the apes in the kingdom will play a different type of role in the movie. Maybe the kingdom itself will be fodder. Maybe the new enemy will show up and it'll slaughter Kong's people, give Kong some motivation and conflict, get Kong into the action, raise the stakes, show how powerful this monster is, that it can take on tons of apes at once. Something along those lines. They could be fodder. Or they could just simply be living in Hollow-Earth peacefully and not really acknowledged again in this movie. Which leads to the other big two, Shimo and Suko. What are those two going to be up to? Well, again, if we're developing this movie meaningfully, Kong and Suko are going to need a lot more to do together. They're going to need to further their dynamic. We could get to a place where we're easily able to sideline Suko without it feeling cheap. If Kong trusts Suko as his successor, if Kong looks at Suko and goes, this guy could be king, and maybe Suko's a little bigger now, maybe he's a little stronger now, maybe he's more able to defend the kingdom, maybe Kong puts him in charge when he leaves. And Suko and Shimo, the two of them together, have such a strong friendship and bond that they can defend the Ape Kingdom from any other threats, and Kong basically goes, you guys stay here, I've got to go to the surface and help Godzilla, you guys watch our people, I will come back, but I'm trusting you to protect our people. And we don't really have to check in on Shimo and Suko all that much for the rest of the movie if the two of them wind up teaming up to defend the Hollow-Earth together. And then we can be back on the surface for a while. I don't think Kong would be willing to risk the lives of his people or his home in order to take on a new monster. Kong just doesn't strike me as the type of guy to lead people into war. First of all, he's never really had people in the first place, so he would be far more protective of them than Scar King was. He's also a good guy, a guy that was willing to save somebody from falling off a cliff who was just trying to kill him. Kong, I just don't see a world where Kong leads people into war. He also just doesn't have the experience with those other apes to be able to command them the way that Scar King was able to. He doesn't have enough social interaction to be a great war leader. Kong's a solo dude. Kong barely is able to team up with Godzilla. They're not even a successful duo yet. So let alone Kong leading an ape army into battle. I don't think Kong's willing to risk the lives of any of his apes. The only person I think Kong would be willing to allow help him, and I don't even think he'd want it, is Shimo. I think Kong would allow Shimo to team up with them and help them. I could see Shimo being involved. So it's very possible Kong leaves them in the Hollow-Earth and that they defend the apes. It's also possible we do a thing where Kong leaves Suko down there, Shimo comes up to the surface. A lot of people, kind of including myself, are thinking Shimo could die. The reason Shimo could die is because killing Shimo is a really strong way to establish conflict for Kong, establish how big of a threat the new bad guy is, and also take off what is essentially an enormously overpowered character. If Shimo could freeze Godzilla for a while, let's say Godzilla doesn't have a thermonuclear pulse, if she could just freeze him and leave for a while and Godzilla's just stuck frozen in ice for a couple days, that's a pretty freaking big power to just have out there in the world. Shimo is like the Captain Marvel of kaiju. She's too overpowered to the point where what do you do with her other than sideliner? I guess you could introduce that the new monster has some sort of signal that it can also emit that can mess with her and harm her in the same ways that Scar King's magic crystal could. We never explored what that was. Maybe the new enemy finds one of those things. Maybe the new enemy makes one. Maybe Spacegodzilla makes one. Or maybe they just kill her and they just move on from Shimo because she's overpowered. I hope not, but I could see it. Mothra. Mothra is my big pitch. What is Kong going to be doing in this next movie? If there are threats to the Hollow-Earth that are separate from the threats to the surface, but connected, that draw Kong to the surface eventually to help Godzilla, if we can interconnect the plots a little more, like let's say in the last movie, if Tiamat and Scylla were somehow indirectly related to what Scar King was up to in the Hollow-Earth, that'd be a much more natural way, organic way to connect those two plot lines. If we do something like that in this next movie, I could see a world where Mothra and Kong have to team up in the Hollow-Earth for a while, and the two of them them build a duo. This is just some wish fulfillment because ultimately at the end of the day, Mothra is the character I want to see team up with Kong the most, even more than Godzilla. I think the two of them have very interesting dynamics. They both have very similar histories. Mothra 61 is essentially a remake of King Kong 1933. They have such a beautiful history and they're so connected, even in terms of the way that Kong's a big gorilla, Mothra's a big moth. There's so much going for that duo that I would love to see those two team up. They're also the both most pure-hearted kaiju of all. Seeing those two power up and fight together would be great. And Mothra could be a fantastic help. Mothra could web up the portal to Hollow Earth to the surface world in Kong's temple. She could be the one that repairs it the way that she repairs the Iwi wall. Mothra could help clean up. She could fly those big pillars around and help clean up the temple. Mothra could help Kong in so many ways. She could help clean portals up and defend portals from other apes that would want to go to the surface or other titans in the Hollow Earth that might want up. Mothra could be the one to go to Skull Island. As we've already seen, Mothra has the ability to repel one of Ghidorah's storms. She herself could fly to Skull Island, repel the storm, and birth Monster Island in the MonsterVerse, a refuge for the surface world titans as they don't have anywhere to go. Surface world titans have nowhere to go. If Mothra saves Skull Island, redeems it, blows away Ghidorah's storm, brings back the life that is there, and welcomes it as this beautiful kingdom for the surface world titans, we could have Monster Island in the MonsterVerse. Kong could even be the king of that alongside Mothra. They could be the king and the queen of Skull Island together and the Hollow Earth, and then Mothra could be the queen of the monsters with Godzilla overall in general. We probably should get two Mothras to do all this, but if there were technically two Mothras alive during the events of King of the Monsters, I suppose we could, considering the Mothra in the New Empire was supposedly the mother of the one from King of the Monsters. Maybe Mothra gets sidelined as well. Maybe she's left in Hollow Earth. Maybe she has to defend the Iwi. Maybe she cannot leave the Hollow Earth because she's defending the Iwi and she doesn't like to leave because she's the protector of Hollow Earth and the Iwi, and so she's just down there forever. That would be lame. You got the Mothra IP, do something with her. Unless you're gonna have Kong team up with Rodan instead, I'm down for that. Which gets us to Kong. The general gist of what I'm saying is I think Kong's going to be the leader of his people, and we're going to see his social development go a long way in this next movie. I think he's going to be a little bit less associated with Monarch and humanity, and more associated with Titans. I think he might become something of a Titan ambassador, whereas Godzilla's a guy who will kill you for simply waking up. What weapons will Kong have? I'm thinking he'll probably ditch the Beast Glove earlier into the movie, but I do think he'll still have it, and the axe. The axe is too iconic, although I could see them doing a thing where it breaks, even though it'd be a little lame considering Kong gets it towards the end of Godzilla vs. Kong and only uses it for 1.5 fight sequences, and Kong also only uses it for one fight sequence in the New Empire. Kong actually hasn't done a lot with the axe, despite the fact that he's always seen holding it. He doesn't actually do a lot with it, so keep the axe. Why does Kong get involved? Well, if the threat comes from the Hollow Earth, then that's why. If the threat is a direct threat to him, then that's why. But if the threat isn't, would he care? Well, Kong didn't seem to care about Ghidorah's Alpha Call, although he was responding in canon to all the skull crawlers and titans that woke up on Skull Island, and he began to hunt those things, so he showed some level of it is my problem, although I guess he's the defender of Skull Island, so he was bound to do that anyways. I think Kong will get involved because Godzilla needs it. Godzilla is going to have, I'm assuming, the A plot of this movie. The threat is going to be an active threat to Godzilla, and Kong will be pulled in as a backup card for Godzilla. Hey, they could even go the route of Invasion of Astro Monster, where Kong is dragged out of Hollow Earth against his will in order to take on a space monster. They could go that route as well. They're forcing a team up between Godzilla and Kong because they already have established it's an effective duo, the exact way that they already established that Godzilla and Rodan were an effective duo against Ghidorah, so they just used them against Ghidorah in the sequel. Very well could be what we do here as well. Bringing Kong in to help team up with Godzilla because Godzilla needs it. That's what I think is going to happen, is Godzilla's going to need some backup, and Kong's going to be the guy to give it. I do believe that this will be a Godzilla-centered movie just like everybody else. I do believe that Godzilla will be the one in need of help this time. It would also be a nice inversion of Kong being the one who needed help last time. I do believe that's where we're going to go. Why Kong and not other monsters? Well, because Kong's a proven powerhouse. It's already stated multiple times in the MonsterVerse, Kong is one of the strongest titans, and Kong is also the strongest good guy titan. Mothra is the only other true heroic titan. Godzilla's status as a hero continues to be called into question as he does questionable things. Godzilla is a defender, but is he defending the Earth or humanity or his own title and ego? That is up for debate at the moment. Kong fights for peace, he fights for innocence, he fights for heroic things alongside Mothra. Those are the two absolute heroes. That's why Kong will be called into battle. That's why Kong will be in the conflict. I could see Monarch needing his help, or I could see Godzilla finally letting go of his ego and getting Kong himself. That would be really nice if Godzilla for once does the right thing and goes and gets Kong himself. That would be really interesting. That would really develop Godzilla's character and develop Kong's character, as now you would see Kong have this moment of, that's how it feels. You need me, and I'm here unlike you were. Unless Kong's like, dude, get out of Hollow Earth, I don't want you here, and they rehash the fight, which I hope they don't do. It could also be a case of like, maybe Godzilla's son's in danger and Kong wants to help Godzilla's son, or Kong wants to help Godzilla himself. Maybe Godzilla just is in danger and Kong's like, I gotta help this guy because he needs it. And so Kong will just do the right thing and help him. Any of those reasons will get Kong involved. I think he'll bring his Beast Glove and his axe. I think the Beast Glove will probably break pretty early on. I don't know why I think that. I just don't think it's going to stick around forever. But I do think the axe will be a staple. But what do you think? Comment below and let me know. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think Kong is going to be doing in this next movie? I really would like to know. And what do you think is going to happen with the others? Do you think the Ape Kingdom is going to be involved? What about Shimo and Suko? What do you think Mothra is going to be up to, if anything? Leave all of your thoughts down below. I would love to have this as an ongoing discussion with you guys. As always, a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. If that's not your thing, please consider joining as a channel member. I'd really appreciate that. Thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.